Circle is sponsored by Marsh, your homegrown grocer since 1931.
Welcome to Full Circle. I'm glad you could be with us. Our guest on today's program spent over 20 years as host of morning radio shows for such stations as WENS in Indianapolis. The iconic team of Ann Craig and John Cinnamon join us today. They're not only going to reminisce about their radio days, but they'll talk about their love of travel. They are the owners of Cruise One Travel franchise. It is great to have you both here on the show.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
You know, it's amazing our paths have crossed over the years, so it's really great to have a chance to catch up with you today. You know, John, I want to start with you. You've been in radio for many years, as Ann has as well. When you turn on the radio in the morning, do you find that it's really a lot different in terms of the format, or have things not changed so much over 20 years?
Actually, they have changed considerably, because more often than not, when you turn the radio on in the morning, it's very likely you're going to hear a syndicated show. There really aren't that many locally based morning shows that are actual people sitting in the studio here in Indianapolis or wherever. You're hearing a lot of syndication, and that's what's changed in radio a lot. There's a lot of syndication.
In fact, our last job was at the Smooth Jazz Station. We co-hosted the morning show there for 5 years, and out of 4 stations in that building, 4 radio stations, we were the only live morning show.
That's really amazing. And you know, with all the iPods and you get music on your computers and satellite,
That's right.
It obviously has changed the playing field.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you miss anything in particular about your hosting of radio shows?
Oh, sure. I enjoyed the people so much. I enjoyed the listeners. I really enjoyed having the ability to help organizations and help people. There were a lot of organizations that I was connected to over the years, and
Riley Foundation was one of them. Tell me about that.
We did a radiothon for Riley for 7 years, raised over $2 million, and we literally did stay on the air for most of 97 hours. We'd start on a Wednesday afternoon. And we'd finish up on the Sunday afternoon and then present the check on the telethon locally. And it was hard.
Yeah, but that's a good way to give back to the community that we do miss. As you were saying, John, we no longer have those local folks in the local market. You've been in radio for a number of years. You had an opportunity to dig up some pictures of your first radio job, and also I remember you and the John and Jerry show. Tell us a little bit about what attracted you to radio and why you got started in it.
I grew up in a small town in Illinois listening to, as probably many people did in the Midwest, WLS radio in Chicago, and the disc jockeys. I know Ann's not a big fan of that term, but that was the word back in the day. Listening to the guys on the radio, they sounded like they were having fun and they were playing music, and that seemed like a fun thing to do for a living, and so that's really what I wanted to do.
And it didn't hurt that both of you have really great voices.
Oh, well, thank you.
You know, in television, people see you on the camera, but when you're in the radio station, they only hear your voice. Do people have certain reactions when they finally meet you in person, Ann?
Everybody always thought I was blonde and big, and I turned out to be rather short, you know, and so I think people were usually surprised at that. But
quite often you'd hear someone say, "You don't look anything like you sound."
Yeah.
That was very common.
We hear that a lot.
Yeah, well, there's something about our mind, you know, when we hear certain voices, we get this image of what a person should look like.
Absolutely.
Well, I know the two of you really did a lot of special stunts as well. And John, in fact, I think you did some skydiving one time?
Yes, we used to play a game on WENS. It was Battle of the Sexes, and it was an ongoing game, and we'd play to 50, and whichever sex, male or female, lost, that person had to pay the consequence. And this time around, it was having to jump out of an airplane. I had never skydived before, and so we made those arrangements and actually made it work technically. They had me wired up, so I was actually on the air live while I was floating down.
And it was scary because
sure.
they had gone through this training the day before live on the air, and they had told him to make sure he keeps his feet together. And so he had this in his head. So I'm on the ground, he's up in the plane, and he's ready to skydive. He's ready to jump. And I can hear him go, my feet aren't together, my feet aren't together. And I'm panicking.
Now, were you married at the time?
Yes. Because
Okay.
I'm thinking something's wrong, and, you know, he's going to fall out of this plane and, you know, hit. And everything was fine, and it worked out great, and he had a great time. But
Actually, it was. It was very, very exhilarating.
Have you had an opportunity to skydive since then?
No, I haven't.
I can understand why. Before we go to the break, I believe we have a picture of you, Ann, all covered in chocolate. What was that about?
That was another payoff, and the idea was around Easter. I was to be look like a live Easter bunny, get dipped in chocolate and rolled in nuts. And I actually had a crane that took me, picked me up, dipped me in the chocolate, and then put me in a whole bunch of nuts and rolled me at this company, not too far from here. And it actually made our trade magazine, the whole industry. It's called R&R, and it's an industry trade magazine, and I made the cover for that, so I have that framed.
Well, there you go. Well, you won't see me going in chocolate, but I am going to stay here and hope you will too as we find out more about what John and Ann are doing these days, and they have lots of great travel tips for us. Stay with us. Welcome back to Full Circle. If you've just now joined us, I am talking with Ann Craig and John Cinnamon. You may remember them in their radio days when they were at WENS and other radio stations around Indianapolis. But now we're going to talk with our guest about their passion and their love called travel. Ann, I understand that you had an early calling of travel. Tell me how that passion got started in your life.
My parents.
Really?
Yeah. We traveled all around the country and had made 49 states by the time I left home at 19. And so it started with them, and then we traveled abroad on a major trip. There was a Holy Lands Bible tour, actually. And just loved it. And then I got married, my first husband, and we moved to Tehran, Iran. So I lived in Iran for 1.5 years and traveled somewhat while I was there. And then you have kids and things happen. You don't get to travel quite as much. And then since John and I have been married for 16 years now, we've traveled extensively. And we've made all 50 states, 65 countries, 6 continents, and our 7th continent, Antarctica, is coming up next year.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, John, when you travel with someone, you know that you're compatible or not. I'm curious, are you and Ann very similar in the way you travel? Do you like to do some of the same things once you get on location?
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. And we certainly go into any particular kind of a vacation knowing what we're going to do, whether it's renting a car and driving the length of Italy, or going on a cruise and knowing which destinations we're going to hit and what shore excursions we're going to do. So we're pretty simpatico when it comes to things like that.
Now, are people a little more cautious, though, these days? You know, there was a time when you could just sort of take off on your own and not do the real set tours. But are you finding when people call Cruise One travel franchise that they want to have a little bit more structure to the trip that they're embarking upon?
Probably so, and I think people do need to be careful almost anywhere they go anymore. You want to keep an eye out, certainly. But cruising is a real safe, fun way to go and see lots and lots of things. The nice thing about cruising is that you can see, for instance, we did a Baltic cruise a few years ago, and I think we hit like 7 countries, and you don't have to pack and unpack and get on planes, and you know, you're in your cabin, and you get to stop at all these different ports without, you know, a lot of hassle. You wake up in the morning, you're somewhere new.
And I would agree with that. I've only been on 2 cruises. You guys have done a whole lot of travel, but it is so nice. You can really get an overview of many countries in a relatively short period of time.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about some tips for our folks at home that perhaps are just getting ready for their first trip overseas. What are some key things that we need to keep in mind, especially for that long flight overseas?
Well, certainly on a long flight, You're going to want to make sure that you're drinking plenty of fluids on the plane and get up every couple of hours and walk around, make sure that blood is flowing through your legs, because there have obviously been incidences of what they call deep vein thrombosis, blood clots forming in the legs and things like that.
And he's a perfect example.
Because that actually happened to me, not on a plane.
We
actually took a long driving trip out west here in the U.S.
a couple years ago.
And somewhere between Santa Fe, New Mexico and Oklahoma City, started getting chest pains. I thought it was a heart attack. Turned out it was a pulmonary embolism that put me in a hospital in Oklahoma City for 3 days.
So no wonder you told us to remember that.
Yes.
Absolutely, that
and I'm glad you're here to tell the story.
Yes,
Yes, that's scary. So it's not just someone saying, you know, walk around and drink plenty of fluids.
No,
There's
it's
an actual physical reason to do so.
Yes.
What other advice do you have, Ann?
Well, I would say if you are traveling to different countries, you want to make sure you don't need a visa, because there are countries that need visas. Usually Europe and your more common places like that won't, but if you are going a little more exotic, a lot of countries need a visa.
In addition to a passport.
In addition to a passport.
Sure.
And if you have a passport, make sure you've checked when it expires, because even though you might get back before it expires, if it expires within some countries it's 6 months, sometimes it's 3 months, but they want that passport to be good for sometimes as much as 6 months after you're back. So you want to make sure that it hasn't expired.
And to give yourself plenty of time if you're just getting that passport for the first time.
Oh yeah,
before you take off.
Right.
It can take a few months sometimes to get a passport.
Absolutely.
So, another thing, in these days, you do a lot of people take their mobile phones and think you're gonna be able to use it. It's expensive to roaming charges in other countries. So you want to check with your mobile carrier before you go and see what the charges are. Just recently, we were out of the country, and my youngest son was with us, and he turned on his phone and got charged. Didn't use it, he just turned it on.
Yes.
So be careful even turning your phone on.
That's important. And you know, back to passports, I always make sure I make a copy of it and get an itinerary to someone back home. So if for some reason it gets lost or stolen.
Always do that.
Well, before we go to a break, because we have your suitcases here waiting to come over to the set, because I'm really curious how the two of you pack. But first I want to ask you both, what are some cities that you think, if someone is just now thinking, oh, I want to travel, whether it's in the United States or overseas, what are some top cities that you would like to recommend?
Absolutely internationally, I would say London. That if it's someone's first international trip, that's a good starting place because they speak the language. And the biggest difference you're going to see is driving on the other side of the road. If you don't rent a car, you don't have to worry about that. But there are so many iconic things that you've seen before. Big Ben, you can see that in person. You can drive out to Stonehenge.
So much history.
See that.
Yeah.
And again, that's a real nice, relatively easy place to start because you don't have to worry about the language barrier.
Paris is beautiful. Rome is a must-see because it's just so much history and it's just beautiful. We really like Sydney. Sydney is a beautiful city. The Quay. Bridge.
The harbor with the bridge on one side and the Opera House on the other side.
I walked across that bridge, and I don't know if you have noticed where they actually walk over the top.
Absolutely, yes.
And I have a fear of bridges, but I think that's one of the nice things about travel. You get outside of your comfort zone.
Just going is outside your comfort zone. And
Absolutely.
when you go wild places like we've been to Tibet and Easter Island and places like that are so outside your normal, it makes other, average things seem like nothing.
You get a better appreciation of the whole world that we live in.
Yeah.
Well, don't go away. We're going to bring those suitcases over and we're going to peek inside of them after this. Back with Ann Craig and John Cinnamon, and as you can see, we are traveling and they have their suitcases. We are talking about tips, and I'm so glad that you're here today because you have given us such helpful information.
Well,
thank you.
Good.
All right, now these are your real suitcases.
These are our actual suitcases. We leave tomorrow on a trip.
Okay.
And so we are packed and ready to go, and this is the real deal. And you'll see major differences here. This is like it came from the factory. This looks like a stunt suitcase because this is John's, and he is so particular, and his suitcase will look just like this when he comes home.
Now yours is down here on the ground. It looks a little disheveled, Ann.
Yeah, I don't
if I do
care.
say so myself.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm not as particular. I just want to make sure I get everything I need in it, and by the end, it will be so jammed and, you know, and dirty clothes back in, you know, this part, and I won't be able to find anything, but usually it always makes it back, and we're fine.
And that's the key thing.
It is, yeah.
So we want to be a little bit more organized, and you have some helpful hints for us. So John, why don't you give us a few, since you have such a neat suitcase.
One thing that I like to do is I will put stuff inside my shoes. It serves two purposes. It's wasted space in there, so put something in there. I use socks and maybe a tie, a belt I'll put in there. It also sort of acts like a shoe tree, so your shoes don't get collapsed in there.
And you can put breakable things in there too. So if you got something that might break, the shoes will protect it.
That's great.
And that is a shower cap.
Great idea.
That you find in hotels.
Sure.
For free.
Whoever uses shower caps anymore, at least I don't, but this is a great idea. You just put them on your shoes and you can put them anywhere in the suitcase, and it doesn't get your the rest of your clothes dirty.
Of course, it helps that he has size 13 shoes, and so he can fit
the shower
stuff in there. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what other things can we glean from this packing?
I just like to make sure that everything is every space is filled and very nicely compacted.
I'm
in
surprised
there.
it's not color coordinated.
One thing we do recommend is take along an extra collapsible carry-on in there, empty,
For
so
souvenirs.
Yeah, big souvenir collector.
Yeah.
So that when you have this as a
great
carry-on on
idea.
the way home.
That's right, so that you can put all your stuff in there and not have to cram it all in there. Another tip is to put colorful tags on your suitcase.
Yeah.
So that you can find them. I actually found those at a local luggage store and had them monogram it and all with our C on it. But then that way, when it comes off the belt, you know, most people have black and you can't find yours.
They all look alike.
They all look alike. Yours stands out. Some people tie ribbons or that kind of thing, but a nice big luggage tag that makes it stand out, colorful, that helps.
That's a great idea.
And we also recommend don't spend a whole lot on luggage, because it is going to get beat up.
And not only that, they also say that if you spend a lot, and people know that this is
Like
an
if you have a
expensive
nice
suitcase,
leather bag or something.
yeah, or you got some sort of designer suitcase or something, thieves will immediately assume you've got something in there, and they will very likely, because you can't lock your suitcases anymore, you have to leave them unlocked. People will actually rob you if you've got expensive suitcases. So, and as much as we travel, they get so beat up, there's just no point in spending a lot on a suitcase.
You know, that's a real good idea. You know, one of the things that I was reading in the material that you sent was that when you do travel, especially overseas, you want to dress not to stand out.
Absolutely.
Why is that so important?
You can be as patriotic as you want here at home, but if you're traveling anywhere in the world these days, you don't exactly want to wear an American flag on your jacket or anything like that.
Kinda like a target.
You want to blend in because, yeah, literally, you don't want to be a target. You don't want to stand out. And it doesn't matter whether you're going to, I don't know, Iran or Somalia or London, because there can be trouble pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily want to draw attention to yourself.
And especially shorts in some countries, in the Middle East, even men, you should not wear shorts, and women should be very careful about wearing anything too revealing, too short.